Secretary. As always, we want to make sure that all members have an opportunity to ask questions of the Secretary. Therefore, without objection, each member will be recognized for 3.5 minutes to accommodate the Secretary's time. We will now proceed to the question and answer session, and I'll begin. In the Inflation Reduction Act, Democrats gave your department $3 billion to implement a drug price setting scheme, which will undermine innovation into life-saving drugs and increase the cost of new medications. I, along with the ranking member of the Senate Finance Committee, Senator Crapo, as well as House Energy and Commerce Chair Kathy McMorris Rodgers, have requested detailed information on how your department plans to spend the $3 billion. That was sent to you more than a month ago, and we only received your response just mere minutes before the hearing began today. Will you commit to keeping Ways and Means regularly informed by making appropriate HHS officials available to testify before this committee about the drug pricing scheme so that we can have more effective oversight over what I fear will be more government expansion and control?
Mr. Chairman, we are absolutely committed to making sure that in implementation of this new prescription drug law that allows us to negotiate for better prices and increase competition, that we will absolutely keep this committee informed. Thank
you, Secretary. The President's budget claims to add 25 years of solvency to the Medicare program, but it is all just budgetary sleight of hand. The President's budget does have $650 billion in new taxes on small businesses, but then you use that money to claim both shoring up Medicare's trust fund and deficit reduction. You are putting budget gimmicks over beneficiaries. The last time you claimed savings in Medicare through the Inflation Reduction Act's drug price setting program, you used that $300 billion in savings to pay for Green New Deal policies such as green vehicle tax credits. How can you assure the new revenue will be used for Medicare solvency when your own budget also claims these same tax increases will be used for deficit reduction?
Mr. Chairman, what I can tell you is that the President is committed to make sure that he not only extends Medicare into the next generation, but he does it by protecting the benefits that current Medicare beneficiaries receive. And the beauty of this is that because he does it in a way that doesn't hurt middle-income Americans, we can make sure that as you continue to work, you're going to be ready to receive your Medicare ready and fully there to go for you. And so what I can say to you is that the President is the first President I know, and I sat at that dais for over 20 years, the first President who's actually proposed a real plan to deal with Medicare to keep it strong for the years to come.
So that leads to my next question, because he didn't address this issue in regards to Medicare. During the Biden administration's first 2 years, we have seen nearly $2 trillion in unpaid for reckless Democrat spending. And according to PAYGO law, this will result in more than $500 billion in cuts to Medicare over the next decade. To the detriment of seniors, your budget shows no plan to reverse these cuts. You simply ignore them and try to sweep them under the rug as if they're not happening. Why don't you account for these looming cuts in your budget, and what are you going to do to prevent them from taking place?
Mr. Chairman, we can try to go through numbers, but what I can tell you is that the President's budget actually reduces the deficit in the years to come. And what it does for Medicare is it preserves those benefits that we have become accustomed to seeing available to our family members, our parents, and our grandparents. And what I will tell you is this. The President made sure that he proposed a budget that not only would strengthen Medicare for the next generation, but at the same time, and the budget numbers show it, would be able to reduce the deficit long-term by substantial numbers into the hundreds of billions, if not trillions.
But the budget doesn't say anything about the $500 billion in looming cuts from PAYGO. Do you have anywhere in the budget that you would show that the President's going to make sure those cuts don't take an effect?
So I'll try to stay in my lane and speak to HHS budget elements, and say to you that within Medicare, I can speak to you unequivocally that this budget protects every single benefit that the Medicare laws provide to seniors and those who are disabled. And it does so by making sure that moving forward into the next generation, those very benefits are there for them as well.
Last Tuesday, you received a letter from myself and all the Republicans on the Ways and Means Committee and Energy and Commerce Committee asking specific questions about proposed changes your department wants to make to the Medicare Advantage program. Your department is claiming a 1% increase in Medicare Advantage payments for 2024. This calculation includes what's called the risk score trend, basically a metric that's supposed to project insurance plans' coding behavior throughout the year to care for their beneficiaries. Do you agree that the risk score trend, of which CMS projects to be 3% for 2024, is a forward-looking metric and is not factored into a plan's base payment?
Mr. Chairman, today, after some 30 years, almost 30 years of managed care within the Medicare system, we have data that helps us be able to project forward. And the projections that we are making are based on data. And that data are showing us that in many cases that we have been overpaying those insurance companies that are within the Medicare system. We're simply trying to make sure that we keep money in Medicare for Medicare beneficiaries. And no one, whether it's an insurance company or a provider, should make unreasonable profits at the expense of Medicare beneficiaries. And so we're just trying to make sure that we now use the data, the evidence that we have, to make sure that we move forward in the Medicare program, whether it's the fee-for-service program or the managed care program.
It's my understanding that this is a projected metric. Do you agree that your own agency, CMS, approves Medicare Advantage insurers' bids excluding this risk score trend?
Chairman, why don't you ask the question again? Now you're asking me to get into CMS's business, so I want to make sure I'm...
Yeah. Do you agree that your own agency, CMS, approves Medicare Advantage insurers' bids excluding this risk score trend?
So I'll try to answer best I can and certainly ask our administrator to respond more directly and precisely, but we make sure that we follow both the statutory prescriptions that we have and all the regulations that are in place for the managed care program within Medicare when it comes to how we put out the reimbursement rates for those insurance companies. And what we're finding is, of course, that we are overpaying in many cases, and now we're trying to make sure we get some of that money back. It's in the billions.
It's my understanding that CMS excludes this in their evaluation. So excluding this risk score trend, Medicare Advantage insurers will have to set their premiums based on an expected 2% decrease in payments compared with last year, correct?
We in our plan, we do not require Medicare Advantage plans to cut any Medicare services that are provided within the confines of the law of Medicare.
So, Mr. Secretary, it's basic math. 1 minus 3 is a negative number. We have heard from many concerned groups that this proposal may lead Medicare Advantage insurers to increase premiums or decrease certain benefits, potentially impacting seniors and their access to care. I urge you to provide a diligent response to our questions that we sent you. One last thing. HHS under President Trump established a hospital price transparency rule that went into effect on January 1st, 2021, requiring hospitals to post publicly the cost of various medical services they provide. Unfortunately, there are major concerns regarding hospitals' compliance with the rule and whether the data is truly helpful for patients. What is the Biden administration doing to ensure hospitals are abiding with not just the letter, but the intent of that rule so that patients have greater transparency and insight into the cost of the procedures before they receive care?
Excellent question, Mr. Chairman, because we're trying to make sure that we move forward that new law. I think there's still some 30% of providers who have not yet complied. We're trying to move quickly. Part of it, we have to recognize that these providers had never had to do that. All of them use different formulas to figure out what their cost structure would be. We're trying to get all of them to become more uniform, but that does not excuse for them not complying with the law. And so we're trying to be more aggressive in how we get them there. Hopefully it's with a carrot, but we've got the stick as well that you all provided us, and we will definitely try to do that. And look to you for some guidance as well, because we want to make sure that as we get all these providers to be transparent in their pricing, we do it without hurting the little guys who don't have the kind of wherewithal that the big guys do to really get in that stream of things. And by the way, on Medicare, managed care program, Medicare Advantage, so-called Medicare Advantage, Mr. Chairman, our proposal increases the amount of money that those insurance companies will get from last year. How anyone can claim that there's going to be a cut, I don't understand. The second thing is, there is nothing that we are doing that would require any insurance company to cut any benefits to any American on Medicare. If they make those cuts, it's those insurance companies that are doing it, and it's on them, not on the laws or what we've done at CMS.
It's just a huge concern for 31 million Americans, and we're very concerned because
it should be.
Because many of these Americans are worried that they're going to have cuts, and the way that we add it up, it appears that there's going to be a minus 2% cut.
Well,
so
that's what happens when you have these deceptive commercials that are on TV, and I think it's unfair.
We need to, yeah. Well, this will not be the last we discuss this topic.
Yes.
Thank you, Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Recognize the